Hey, Kevin, you've talked a lot about the debt and the deficit and trying to bring it down, of course, and that has been one of the efforts that we've talked about together probably for, I don't know, a decade, if not more.
20.
When you think about DOGE and what it can do to bring down the debt and deficit, one of the big questions that has come up in the past week and a half has been this concept that Elon and the president have suggested there's a possibility of sending out these dividend or refund checks to taxpayers. And I'm curious how you think about that relative to the larger goal of bringing down the debt, recognizing that if checks are sent out, we're effectively levering ourselves up again.
Right. Thanks for the question. One thing that you can see is that if you see it in the 10-year, that markets believe that we're going to be very, very successful reducing the deficit. That's the only explanation for the big move in reducing interest rates, which has saved American taxpayers already over the last month about $50 billion. Markets believe it because it's true. Because if you look at what DOGE is doing every day, they're identifying cuts that we really ought to cut. And what we're doing at the Council of Economic Advisors and the National Economic Council is we're going to quantify those things. We're going to put out reports that show you exactly where the money comes from. And those reports are going to be so convincing that people will accept that those cuts can happen during reconciliation. That's our challenge. It's not a hard challenge because DOGE is doing a heck of a lot of good work on that. But we also have the gold visas, I got to say. The gold visas, it's not just a small thing. There are 300,000 or so visas, green cards, that have been granted but not used. And if we start allowing those to be people to invest in America and buy into that, then there's an enormous amount of revenue from that, too. And so we are really, really focused on getting a balanced budget.
Kevin, can I ask two detailed questions on that?
Yeah, sorry.
How do you know the 10 years the yield's not going down because there's a recession coming from some of these policies? That's what the left would say. Sorry, Andrew, but I had to. He said it's just obvious that it's because of cutting the deficit. It could be that there's growth concerns. Now you can have. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, if you look at what's been happening with the data, we've got CEO confidence, skyrocketing. We got small business confidence skyrocketing. We have consumer sentiment going the other way. But like the Michigan survey, don't forget that's a lot of angry Democrats from Michigan that are sorry that President Trump's in the White House saying, "Hey, we're really
Kevin,
depressed."
I would also say in Michigan,
look at all the data. There's no way that the data say there's a recession.
But in Michigan, Kevin, and I'm curious what you think. We heard from the CEO of Ford just 2 weeks ago saying that they are effectively hoarding parts and supplies, going back and forth between the border of the U.S. and Mexico, try to get those supplies in ahead of any tariffs, and the uncertainty of all that has created a real complication for those automakers. But I have two questions for you, and I want to get an answer. On the DOGE refund check, if President Trump asked you, is that a good idea to send checks to Americans, the equivalent of stimulus checks, refund checks, dividend, whatever you want to call them, you would tell him yes, no, what?
Oh, sure. It's a great idea. And exactly what number or something is something that we negotiate with Congress. But remember, what happens is they appropriate money, and then we spend it on really silly things. And then we say, hey, we're really not going to spend it. And so then they can rescind the money. And they can take some of the money and they can use it to reduce the deficit. They can take some of the money to put it in people's accounts, to return it as a tax cut. Those are all things that will be on the table. And I think the president makes it clear to all of us that when decisions like that are made, he wants to be in the middle of it.
But that would be a better idea than paying down the debt, given the conversations we've had?
The way the ratio happens between 0 and 1, like does it all go down to the debt? Do people get an immediate reward for all the good work that we're seeing? That's something that politicians will decide. But I think that having a dividend check is something that makes a great deal of sense because, why do we have to, not give people their money back? It's their money. If we save people money, they should get some.
Once
can I also talk
you
about
collect
the macroeconomics
taxes,
of this?
you can never give it back. That's apparently what they think. Once you've taken money in a tax, you can never, ever give it back to the people that own it.
Do I have 30 seconds for one last point about this?
I don't know.
Everybody, I'll go fast. The thing is, everybody says it's inflationary if we mail these checks to these people. You saw that I got that question in the presser. Well, think about it. If the government spends the money, they spend $1, and you get whatever multiplier effect you think of that. If they don't spend the money and they say give it back to people, that if they spend $1, then it's a wash. If they save some of it, inflation goes down. And so the idea that it's inflationary is just, again, people should study their economics textbooks a little bit before they make partisan points.
I just wonder whether if you could get the debt down even further, that would help the 10-year and you create a bigger sort of long-term bump. Maybe, maybe not. Last question on the gold cards. The president said that he thought he could create $5 trillion, believed that there's a million people who could spend $5 million each to buy the gold card. Right now, you talked about 300,000 visas that were taken off or that are available.
Right.
Those are not at $5 million each. When you talk about the TAM, if you will, I was looking, it looks like there's maybe 1.5 million people around the world that would have disposable income of about $5 million even to do something like this. So what do you think the true possibility is here?
Yeah, the possibilities are really, really strong, especially as our economy gets stronger and stronger and the AI revolution makes the U.S. the place everybody wants to be. And the fact is that we've got a lot of ammo. We've got all these green cards that are authorized but not used. And so it's relatively easy to get this program going. I think that in the end, the market will decide what the price looks like. My guess is that it's going to be higher than $5 million. But certainly in the end, the market's going to decide. We're going to have a supply, and then we're going to figure out what those things are worth. But
so you don't think $5 million is the price?
No, we had a weekend of estimates, and we looked at the prices. You guys could go make a table for yourselves, or I could email it to you. We got a table of what other countries are doing, and given that we're the United States, the price is not unreasonable at all.